The unexplained mirror. You won't believe what happened. Some mirrors show more than just your reflection. Some mirrors remember, and some mirrors watch you back. Tonight's story is about a mirror that holds something within it, something that shouldn't be there, something that's been waiting for someone like you to look too long. This is the unexplained mirror. The estate sale. Nathan wasn't the kind of person to believe in ghosts. He didn't care about urban legends, haunted houses, or cursed objects. He was just looking for a good deal. That's why when he stumbled upon an estate sale at an old Victorian house on the outskirts of town, he saw it as an opportunity. Rich people selling their stuff at cheap prices? Perfect. The house itself was old, covered in ivy, the kind of place that looked like it had stories hidden in its walls. But Nathan wasn't interested in history. He was interested in antiques. And that's when he found it. In the far corner of the house, past all the dusty bookshelves and forgotten furniture, stood the mirror. It was huge, at least 7 feet tall, with an ornate golden frame carved with intricate symbols. The glass was strangely dark, almost too clear, as if it absorbed more than it reflected. Nathan was mesmerized. He wasn't sure why, but he needed it. "How much for the mirror?" he asked the estate manager. The man frowned. "That thing?" He scratched his chin. "Take it, free of charge." Nathan blinked. "What? Why?" The man sighed. "Because no one else wants it." That should have been the first warning. But Nathan didn't listen. He took it home, and that was his mistake. The reflection moves too slow. The mirror fit perfectly in his apartment. He set it up in the living room, admiring how it made the space feel larger, how it gave the illusion of depth that hadn't been there before. At first, everything seemed normal, but then things started to change. The first time he noticed something strange was a few nights later. He was brushing his teeth in the bathroom when he glanced at the mirror in the hallway, and his reflection was wrong. It wasn't doing what he was doing. It blinked a second too late, moved its arm just a little too slow. Nathan frowned, rubbing his eyes. Maybe he was just tired. But the next night, it got worse. He walked past the mirror, not even looking at it, but his reflection did. Nathan stopped. Slowly, he turned back. His reflection was standing still, staring at him. Even though he hadn't stopped walking, a chill ran through his spine. That wasn't possible. Something is inside the mirror. By the end of the week, Nathan was avoiding the mirror. He kept catching glimpses of movement when he wasn't looking directly at it. A shadow behind him that wasn't there when he turned around. A flicker of something in the reflection, just for a split second. But the worst part, he started hearing it. A soft tapping, like fingernails on glass. At first he thought it was the pipes, or maybe the neighbors. But then, one night at exactly 3 a.m., the tapping turned into knocking, and then a whisper, soft, cold, "Let me out." Nathan's breath caught in his throat. He sat up in bed, heart pounding. The knocking grew louder. "Please, let me out." He didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, silence. For a moment he thought it was over, until he heard the floor creak, right outside his bedroom door. The thing in the reflection. Nathan didn't sleep after that. The next morning he made a decision. He was going to get rid of the mirror. But when he stepped into the living room, it was already waiting for him. His reflection, standing inside the mirror, watching him, not moving, just grinning. Nathan's stomach twisted. He backed away. And then his reflection stepped forward. Not into the room, not yet. But its hands pressed against the glass. And it whispered, "You don't need to be afraid." Nathan ran. He grabbed a sheet and threw it over the mirror, covering it completely. The whispering stopped, but deep inside the glass, beneath the cloth, he swore he could still hear breathing. The mirror won't leave. Nathan tried everything. First, he called a junk removal company. But when they arrived, the mirror was gone, vanished, until he walked back into his bedroom, and there it was, exactly where it had always been. He tried smashing it with a hammer. The glass didn't even crack. He tried selling it, but when the buyer came to pick it up, it was missing again. Then he tried burning it. The flames refused to touch it. The fire simply went out. That's when he realized the mirror didn't want to leave. It wanted him to. The final night. Nathan didn't leave his bedroom that night. He kept his door locked, trying to ignore the sounds coming from the other room. The soft scraping against the floor. The quiet knocking on the glass. Then, the whispering started again. "I see you. Nathan shut his eyes, pressing his hands over his ears. "I know you're awake." Then, the bedroom door unlocked itself. Slowly, with a soft click, Nathan turned and saw the mirror standing in the doorway. The cloth had fallen off, and his reflection? It wasn't him anymore. It was something else. Something that had been waiting. And then, the thing stepped through. Nathan screamed, but no one heard him. The mirror finds another hab. A few weeks later, Nathan's landlord came to check on him. The apartment was locked from the inside. No sign of struggle, no sign of Nathan. The only thing left behind? The mirror. The glass was smooth, untouched, except for one thing, a handprint. On the inside of the glass, pressed against it, like someone was trapped, like someone was still trying to get out. The final warning. If you ever find an old mirror in an antique shop, if you ever hear knocking from the glass, if your reflection ever moves when you don't look too long. And whatever you do, don't let it out. That's tonight's story. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more terrifying encounters. And let me know in the comments, have you ever seen something in a mirror that wasn't supposed to be there? Until next time, sleep well. The chilling mirror, a nightmare come to life. Some mirrors reflect light, some mirrors reflect shadows, and some mirrors reflect something else, something that doesn't belong in this world. Tonight's story is about a mirror that isn't just a piece of glass. It's a doorway, a prison, a nightmare. And for one unfortunate soul, it became their last mistake. The estate with a secret. Oliver had always been fascinated by antiques. He loved searching through old estate sales, looking for forgotten treasures, unique artifacts, and valuable relics from the past. So when he heard about an estate auction at a mansion in Virginia, he couldn't resist. The house had been abandoned for years, left untouched after the mysterious disappearance of its last owner. The sale had everything: furniture, paintings, sculptures, each item covered in layers of dust. But one thing caught Oliver's eye: the mirror. It was massive, standing over 7 feet tall, framed in an elaborate golden border carved with strange symbols. The glass had a strange dark tint to it, so clear that it almost didn't look like a mirror at all. Oliver felt an instant connection to it, as if it was calling to him. "How much for the mirror?" he asked the auctioneer. The man hesitated. "That mirror?" He scratched his head. "Take it, no charge." Oliver frowned. "Why?" The auctioneer just shook his head. "Some things are better left alone." That should have been his first warning. But Oliver took it anyway. The reflection that wasn't his. The mirror fit perfectly in his apartment. He placed it in the hallway, just outside his bedroom, where it would reflect the light and make the space feel bigger. At first, everything was normal, but then, things started changing. The first oddity happened late one night. Oliver was passing by the mirror when something felt off. His reflection seemed slower. When he blinked, it blinked just a second too late. When he raised his arm, his reflection hesitated. For a moment, Oliver froze, staring at his own image, his heart pounding. Then he laughed nervously. Just my imagination. But it wasn't, because the next night, it got worse. The shadow behind the glass, Oliver was lying in bed, scrolling through his phone when he heard it. A soft tapping, like fingernails on glass. He sat up, listening. The sound was faint, but persistent. Tap, tap, tap. Coming from outside his bedroom, from the mirror. Slowly, he got up and walked toward the hallway. His breath felt heavy, like the air had thickened. He turned the corner and froze. The mirror was different. The reflection of the hallway was there, but something was wrong. It was darker, and in the center of the glass, a shape was standing there. Not him, not his reflection. Something else, a shadow, a figure. Watching him, Oliver's stomach twisted in terror. Then, the shape moved, a slow, deliberate tilt of the head, and then it smiled. Trapped in the glass. Oliver slammed his bedroom door shut, locking it. His pulse hammered in his ears. He told himself it was just a trick of the light, a hallucination, a dream. But then, the whispering started. Soft at first, like a breeze through an open window, then clearer. "You see me?" Oliver's hands clenched into fists. "You hear me?" His body felt frozen, his back pressed against the door. "Let me in." The whisper wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from the mirror. The escape attempt. Oliver knew he had to get rid of the mirror. The next morning, he wrapped it in a sheet and dragged it outside. He put it in his car and drove to the nearest junkyard. But when he got there, the mirror was gone. The back seat was empty. His pulse pounded in his head. When he got home, he didn't want to go inside, but he had to. And when he walked into his apartment, the mirror was back, standing right where it had been, waiting. The last night, Oliver didn't sleep. At exactly 3 a.m., he heard it again. The whispering, "You can't leave." The air turned freezing cold, and then the mirror started shaking. The glass rippled like water disturbed by a stone. Then a hand pressed against the glass. A human hand, but it wasn't his. It was coming from inside. Oliver backed away as the hand pushed through. Fingers curling out, stretching, reaching, and then the thing stepped out. His reflection. But it wasn't him. The eyes were too dark, the skin too pale, and when it smiled, its teeth were sharp. Oliver screamed, but the world went black. The mirror finds another. A week later, the landlord checked Oliver's apartment. The door was locked from the inside. But Oliver was gone. No signs of struggle. No signs of him ever leaving. The only thing left behind? The mirror. The glass was smooth, untouched, except for one thing, a handprint, pressed against the inside, like someone was trapped, still trying to get out. The final warning. If you ever find an old mirror at an estate sale, if you ever hear knocking from the other side, if you ever see something move when you don't, look away, and whatever you do, don't let it in. That's tonight's story. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more terrifying encounters. And let me know in the comments, have you ever seen something in a mirror that wasn't supposed to be there? Until next time, sleep well. The haunted train, what they don't want you to know. Some places are haunted by their past. Some places hold on to memories of tragedy. And some places refuse to let go. Tonight's story is about a train that never stopped running. A train where passengers board, but not all of them make it off. The midnight train that shouldn't exist. For decades, there have been whispers about a train that runs through the Appalachian Mountains. It's not listed on any schedule. No conductor ever acknowledges its existence. And yet, on certain nights, if you stand near the old tracks, you can hear it. A long, distant whistle. The heavy clatter of wheels on rusted rails. And if you're unlucky enough, you might see it. A black locomotive, covered in soot and shadows, slowing just enough to welcome new passengers. Passengers who, once they step inside, are never seen again. The man who took the last ride. John Whitaker was a skeptic. He had spent years as a train enthusiast, traveling across the country to photograph abandoned railways, forgotten stations, and historic locomotives. But there was one mystery he had never been able to solve. The midnight train of Black Hollow. Locals warned him not to look for it. They told stories of people who had followed the tracks at night, hoping to see the phantom train, and were never heard from again. John didn't believe in ghost stories. So, he set out to find it himself. The tracks that should have been empty. It was October 30th, just before midnight, when John reached Black Hollow. The tracks had been abandoned for over 50 years. Rusted, overgrown, forgotten. But as the clock struck 12, he heard it. A distant, thunderous roar. The trees shook as the sound grew louder. Then, through the thick fog, John saw something that shouldn't have been there. The train. A massive, black locomotive, its metal exterior covered in ashes and grime. The windows were dark except for a few faint glows from inside. It was slowing down. The doors creaked open, and then a voice. A low, guttural whisper that sent ice down his spine. "Are you coming aboard?" A train full of ghosts. John hesitated. Every instinct told him to run, but his curiosity won. He stepped inside. The air was thick and cold. The entire train smelled of dust, smoke, and something rotten. The seats were full. Passengers sat in stiff rows, staring straight ahead. They didn't blink. They didn't speak. And then John noticed something even more disturbing. Their clothes. They were old. Too old. Tattered suits, faded dresses, like they belonged to another century. That's when he realized these weren't passengers. They were spirits, trapped. And as John turned to leave, he saw something that made his blood turn to ice. At the very end of the car, a man was watching him. His face was hollow, his eyes black voids, and he was grinning. The train that wouldn't stop John ran. He sprinted down the aisle, past the motionless passengers, back toward the door. But when he reached it, it was gone. The entryway had disappeared. The train was moving faster now. The windows showed nothing but blackness. No outside world, no tracks, just void. And then the whispering started. Soft voices circling him, growing louder, overlapping. "Stay with us. You belong here. There's no way back." John covered his ears. Then a hand grabbed his shoulder. He turned. The man with hollow eyes was right behind him. "You should have stayed away," the figure rasped. Then darkness. Waking up on the tracks. John woke up on the cold ground. It was morning. The train was gone. The tracks were silent, rusted, just as they had been before. For a moment, he thought it had been a dream. But then, he looked at his hand. There, in his palm, was a ticket, burnt at the edges, faded. And on it, in smudged ink, was a date, October 30th, 1896. The last recorded day that train had ever run. The day every single passenger vanished. The final warning. John never spoke of that night again. But every year on October 30th, he makes sure to be far away from Black Hollow. Because he knows, the train is still running, still searching for new passengers. And if you ever find yourself walking near abandoned train tracks at midnight, if you hear the sound of a train that shouldn't be there, don't look, don't listen. And whatever you do, don't step aboard. That's tonight's story. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more terrifying encounters. And let me know in the comments, have you ever seen something strange near abandoned tracks? Until next time, sleep well.